Paul John Knowles was a serial killer who was active in 1974. During that year, he ended up being a rather prolific serial killer, claiming to have killed at least 35 people, though only 18 were connected to him by authorities. All this in a 4-month period. Hello, and welcome to Storytime with One Big Hoax. I'm your host, Trina Hoax. Today we're looking at the victims of the serial killer known as the Casanova Killer, Paul John Knowles. Paul was born on April 25, 1946 in Orlando, Florida to Thomas Jefferson Knowles and Bonnie Strickland. He reportedly lived in foster homes when he was young. He was in trouble at different times, including early 1974. In early 1974, Paul was serving time at Rayford Prison in Florida, which is now known as Florida State Prison, when he began communicating with a divorced woman named Angela, or Angie Kovic. They eventually became engaged. Angie paid for his legal counsel, and when Paul was released, he immediately flew to San Francisco, California to be with her. However, she called off the wedding. She reported later that he had exuded an aura of fear. Paul later claimed to have murdered 3 people that night as a result of his dismay. Authorities never verified this claim. Soon thereafter, Paul traveled to Jacksonville, Florida. He stabbed a bartender during a fight, soon after arriving in Florida. While he was being held in detention on July 26, 1974, he picked the lock of his cell and escaped. After his escape, Paul embarked on a 4-month crime spree that extended through multiple states, including Connecticut, Florida, Ohio, Nevada, Texas, Alabama, Virginia, and Georgia. After Paul was captured, authorities found that he had recorded audio-taped confessions that he mailed to an attorney. The tapes, though not released to the public, were reviewed by a grand jury in 1975. Unfortunately, the tapes and the transcripts thereof were damaged beyond repair during a flood of the federal courthouse in Macon, Georgia. Although Paul claimed to have killed 35 people, he was held accountable for 18, as follows. On the night of his escape, on July 26, 1974, Paul broke into the home of 65-year-old Alice Curtis and gagged her. He ransacked her home, looking for money and valuables. He then stole her car. Alice choked to death on the gag. Paul claimed to have murdered a teenage girl named Alma. On December 21st, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation identified this victim as 13-year-old Ima Jean Sanders, who had gone missing on August 1st, 1974. Her skeletal remains were found in April 1976. On August 2nd, 1974, Paul met Marjorie Howie, 49, in Florida. He stole her TV and strangled her to death. On August 23, 1974, Paul forced his way into the home of 24-year-old Kathy Sue Pierce. He strangled her, but left her 3-year-old son unharmed. Physically, that is. On September 3, 1974, 32-year-old William Bates was seen at a pub near Lima, Ohio. Williams's wife reported him missing. His car was missing from the pub, having been stolen by Paul. In October, his nude body was found. He had been strangled and dumped in the woods. Driving Williams Bates' car, Paul bound and killed 2 campers, 62-year-old Emmett Alexander Johnson and 59-year-old Louise Mildred Johnson, at a rest stop in Nevada. The date was September 18, 1974. 4 days later, 42-year-old Evan Charlene Hicks was reported missing. Her body was found by the road on September 25, 1975, near a rest stop outside of Seguin, Texas. She had been raped and strangled to death. It is thought that Paul met 49-year-old Anne Jean Dawson on September 23, 1974, in Alabama. It's unclear whether he abducted her or if she just traveled with him of her own accord. What is known is that she paid the expenses while they traveled together. Paul later claimed that he killed Anne on September 29, 1974, and threw her body into the Mississippi River. Her remains were found in Mississippi on November 15, 1977. On October 16, 1974, 35-year-old Karen Wine and her 16-year-old daughter Dawn Marie Wine were bound, raped, and strangled after their home was broken into. It appeared that the intruder stole a tape recorder. It is believed that Paul was the person who committed these crimes. 2 days later, Doris Hosey, who was 53, was shot to death with her husband's rifle. The gun was placed beside her body. On November 2nd of the same year, 23-year-old Edward Hillard and 20-year-old Debbie Griffin disappeared while hitchhiking near Macon, Georgia. Edward's body was found in the woods nearby. Debbie's remains were found in Crawford County, Georgia, on August 29, 1975. Paul is suspected of murdering the duo. On November 6, 1974, 45-year-old Carswell Hall Carr Sr. invited Paul to his house to spend the night. Paul stabbed Carswell's to death and strangled his 15-year-old daughter, Amanda Beth. After he murdered her, Paul supposedly attempted to have sex with the girl's body. On the morning of November 16th, 35-year-old Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Charles Eugene Campbell recognized the stolen car that Paul had been driving. When he confronted Paul, Paul wrestled the officer's pistol away from him and took him hostage in the patrol car. Paul used the police siren to stop a 29-year-old motorist named James Meyer. He then put both hostages in James's car. Next, he took the two men into a wooded area and handcuffed them to a tree before shooting each of them in the head at close range. After these murders, Paul ended up in a car chase with Henry County Sheriff's Deputy Charles Hancock. Paul crashed the car through a police barricade, and Officer Jerry Key was injured when Paul's car crashed into his patrol car. Paul escaped on foot from the vehicle, firing several shots at the officers following him. A foot chase ensued. Officers employed dogs in the chase. The chase also included law enforcement officers from several agencies and helicopters. Paul was shot in the foot by Chief Detective Philip Howard during the chase. Paul was finally caught on November 17, 1974, by David Clark, a 27-year-old Vietnam War veteran and hospital maintenance worker. David was hunting with a shotgun at the time, held Paul at gunpoint until Henry County investigator Paul Robbins and Billy Payne arrived. The officers arrested and handcuffed Paul. On December 18, 1974, Sheriff Earl Lee and Agent Ronnie Angel were traveling with Paul handcuffed in the back seat of their cruiser. Their destination was Henry County, Georgia, where Paul had, per a Georgia Bureau of Investigation press release, admitted to dumping a handgun he had taken from Florida State Trooper Charles Eugene Campbell after killing him with it. However, during the trip, Paul grabbed Sheriff Lee's handgun while it was still holstered. The gun went off, shooting through the holster as Sheriff Lee struggled with Paul while trying not to lose control of the car. Agent Angel fired 3 shots into Paul's chest, which reportedly killed him instantly. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. I hope you'll tune in for the next one. Bye-bye.